folks, it's Bright Garlic here, and welcome to Shortcuts number 14, the Atmopshere on an ET craft. I don't really know what to call this episode, but I figured I was really talking about what it feels like inside of a craft, so atmosphere was the best word. So it's Monday the 26th of February 2024. It's rather warm out here on the plains. And I'm sitting at my desk with a wasp in the veranda ceiling above to my left and a wasp underneath the floorboards. So I'm not sure whether the wasps in either case will start talking, but they've been rather noisy this morning and I can't really go anywhere else to escape them. So bear with me if you hear a hum in the background. So a lot of people have asked me in the past, what is it like on an ET craft? What are the physical conditions like? What does it feel like in the craft? So what I'll try and do, and this might be a slightly longer shortcut than usual, I will try and explain what it's like physically and what it actually feels like. So take note at the beginning that every race and every craft is different. So for example, a Telia craft versus a Nelson craft versus a Salomon craft, all different, but they have similarities. So one of the key things that you'll note on all craft, as far as I can tell, is this pristine appearance. They're very, very clean, and you might even say minimalist. Part of the reason that they're clean is that the ETs keep them that way. And another reason that they're clean is that the craft will intuitively keep itself clean. I've talked before about matter creation technologies. So if there's anything that gets into the craft that shouldn't be there, the craft will simply remove it. The other thing that will stand out for a lot of people is it's particularly smooth and seamless on the inside. When we see renditions of ET craft in Hollywood, typically they have seams. Real ET craft don't. They don't have seams on the inside, they don't have seams on the outside. And another thing that you'll notice is the lighting. You don't have a light source per se. You don't have a light bulb above or anything like that. They have these hybrid materials, and those hybrid materials are all through the craft, and so the materials themselves will emanate light, and they will emanate light from particular areas. So say I'm in a small ovoid room, it might be that the light is emanated from maybe 3/4 of the way above that circular structure. And so it can be very difficult when you're in there actually looking and trying to understand how it's working, because there is no direct source. It's just emanating and coming out. And that light can be made to appear anywhere from the craft, from the floor to the ceiling. In terms of colours, just in my own recollection, what I remember seeing a lot of was sort of grey and silver and white. But there are other colours on board, but that's typically the colour of the floors and the walls and the roof. You also see different sized interiors, in other words, different sized rooms, depending on the particular race and the population on board and I guess the function of that particular room. And usually, as I said, you have this sourceless lighting, but it's well lit and it doesn't feel like you've got a fluorescent light above. It feels like natural, almost like natural sunlight, but there are variations to that as well. Now, what I also noticed is that some parts of craft with particular races like the Telia are also dark if there isn't a need for that room to be used, it will be kept in the dark. Now, it's not like they're conserving energy. That isn't an issue. It's not like turning out the lights when you leave a room. I'm not really sure why they do it, but I can tell you I've walked around a craft and seen lots of places where there were no lights at all. It was dark, and of course if I wanted to go into that place, then the light would immediately come on. So I mentioned the rooms before, and you would say that to some extent there is a kind of compartmentalization of the rooms on the craft for specific roles, but it's not like one room is necessarily used just for one role. You could have a room with multiple roles, and every race will be different in this regard. You also notice that the temperature and the humidity are just right for you. At least that's my experience. Maybe some people would say that's not the case, but in my experience on many different craft, the temperature and the humidity is just right. And I'll tell you the reason, and I will talk more extensively about this in time, that when you're on board the craft creates a very small, very thin field around you. And so it will make adjustments to your needs within that field. The other thing is that the craft are incredibly quiet. There's no noise actually made by the craft, no humming, no persistent noise, there's nothing mechanical, nothing like that. And the voices that you will hear when you hear ETs talk, and they don't all talk non-stop telepathically, sometimes they will talk, their voices are reasonably quiet. Never heard anybody yelling on a craft or talking loudly. You walk through any human city, any human town, and you'll inevitably hear that at some point, somebody raising their voice. You don't hear that on a craft. I've been on crafts that have been very, very quiet, even large craft, like Dude's craft, but they can also be very, very busy, like small metropolises. And when you're talking about a craft like Dude's, you're talking about something that's more than 100 stories and 6 by 7 kilometres in dimensions. His particular craft is clover-shaped, but that can vary depending on how it needs to be changed. You can walk through a particular floor and find that it's absolutely quiet. There's nobody there. You're the only person there. And in fact, there's a place I like to go on his craft where he has a forest and a lake that has been built into that forest. It's a forest with many different, I guess you'd say, alien forms of vegetation and some earth forms of vegetation. And whenever I go there, I'm the only person there. The lake happens to be one of his favourite places that he made, so I'm allowed to go there. I don't know why, but I am. It's very quiet. There are other times when you can walk through the craft that are on a particular floor, and there are hundreds of different ETs, different races. Some will be sitting and talking in communal areas, others will be eating in a shared eating area. There are rooms for diplomacy and general discussion of issues, I suppose. So nothing is the same on any two craft, and every craft is different. Now, regarding the feel of the craft, I've always felt that the craft, it may be different when you're new to the experience and you don't have fully conscious awareness. You may feel otherwise. I've always felt that the craft were very comfortable. There are a lot of comfortable places. As I said, some places are very busy and it's best to leave people to do their own thing there. It certainly has that I'm not even sure if this is the right word, multi-special kind of feel to it because of all the different kinds of races. But it's always had a nice ambience, and certainly when it's quiet, it has a nice ambience. But even when it's busy, there is a nice kind of ambience there. It's not like this, but this will help people to understand. Let's say you go to a favourite cafe or a favourite pub. and you sit down for a drink and a meal. This is a place you've been coming to for years. Just has a nice kind of background sound to it, a nice ambience, a nice feel about the place. And so the craft, in my experience, are like that, and they're very inviting. I also found that the feel of the craft is very sensitizing. I'm acutely aware of my senses on board the craft, and I'm not sure if that's entirely because of what the craft is doing with the field or being around beings who are highly developed. But there's another thing as well, because there are often windows and very large windows, and you have a view of space, and that can include planets and other phenomena, other celestial bodies. That's a very invigorating and sensitizing experience to have, to be able to view space at any time. It's not like you're sitting in a space with white walls and that's all you ever see. That could drive a person crazy, but you get to look out the window often. And anyone who's done a lot of travel in an aircraft knows that when you have that view, it changes how you feel. My father used to be a flight engineer flying 747s around the place, and he liked to convey what it was like to look out and see the sky or see the land below, and how he loved going to work, being able to have that experience every day of looking out the window and seeing what he could see, seeing the clouds, seeing the sky, seeing the land. So it's a little bit like that. You feel acutely aware of this intimate connection to space, the space that's around you. Also, because it's incredibly quiet and sensitizing, it's very easy to have an awareness of what's going on around you out there and what's going on within you, in your body, in your mind, in your emotional state. And so it would be difficult to go into that environment and blunder away the way that we do on Earth in, say, a human town or a human vehicle with the radio on, because you have these entities who are all well developed emotionally and mentally, spiritually, and because you have a quiet craft, you kind of push to be more aware just by the environment. And so that has a profound effect on you. And when you're at the point where you are given a room on a craft, imagine the best hotel room in the world, or the best hotel room you've ever stayed in. If you want that, you can have it. If you want to live like a monk and have a minimalist room, you can have that too, with nothing in it. Maybe a mattress if that's what you want. And I've always had a large window. So imagine you have a room that's made with your preferences, even before you arrive there. How long before? I'm not sure. That can happen very quickly. So you arrive in this room, it has the bed exactly the way you like the bed, the hardness, the way you like your bed made, whether you want the bottom tucked in or not, the kind of pillows you like, the kind of toilet you're comfortable with, if you need a table or a desk, as I had. All of these little fine adjustments are made for you, the kind of lighting that you like. If you're someone that doesn't like really bright lights, dim the light a little bit. If you don't like the dark and you want it bright, then it'll brighten it up. So you arrive in this room with this ambience and this setup that's perfectly matched to your preferences. So it's really a lovely experience to enter that room and to spend time in that room. And also to know that when you're in the room that your needs are taken care of by the craft. If you want a particular meal, if you want to try an alien meal, you can have that. If you want to have your favourite earth food day after day after day, you can have that. If you are not feeling well, then the craft can look at you and figure out what's going on inside of you and make some recommendations. If you're having some level of discomfort, then the craft can diagnose that or talk you through it and help you to figure it out. So imagine that you have a sentience, an intelligence that has many different roles. It could be doctor, counselor, confidant, friend, scientist, guide, historian, you name it, it's all merged into one in that sentience. So when you spend time in a room, well, I guess you could approach it differently. You could just be in the room and just enjoy the view of whatever you're doing. What I tend to do is I engage a lot with the sentience of the craft, and that is a whole other experience. It makes being on board the craft a very, very comfortable experience indeed. And if you're having trouble with any ETs, the craft will help you through that, and it'll just notice everything that's happening within you mentally and emotionally. But it does respect your privacy. If there are things you don't want known, then it will certainly respect that. And I mentioned before, there was a room I went into, I mentioned on the blog, and I could see other parts of the craft from my room, but my window was made invisible to others, and other windows were made invisible to me. So the craft will set up a level of privacy that's right for you and for others as well. So I mentioned the forest and the lake before, and there are natural areas on some craft where you see biological life forms. Now, I know this best with the ET I refer to as Dude. It's very hard to explain what he does. You might think, why do ETs force a life form to be on a craft, like the equivalent of a plant, or an animal even, the equivalent of an animal? Isn't that cruel? But you have to understand the way that he does it. They are treated so well. The craft emulates daylight and nighttime, complete with the sun, complete with the stars and any moons, and all the biochemical needs that that organism will have and energetic needs are met. Any other needs are met. And so some of those entities will reside for life on the craft, but many end up spending quite some time there and then going on to other worlds where they become part of those worlds. So they're well looked after, well treated. It's not like having an aquarium for us and the fish end up dying because you don't feed them properly, or the algae grows on the side and they can't breathe because the oxygen concentration goes down. So it's a very different kind of way of relating to life forms when they bring them on the craft. And part of the reason they do that is because they also need that connection with the natural world, and they also like to create spaces where others can have that connection. So this forest, now I mentioned the size of the craft before, 6x7 and roughly clover shape. So imagine putting a forest in an area, I don't know what it is at the base because it's curved, it's not quite 6x7, but it's quite large. You can put a very big forest in 1 kilometre by 1 kilometre. So 6x7, you can put a lot, and it's not quite that big at the bottom. But it's large enough that you can walk through that forest and not encounter anybody. So other entities do go there. I've been there and not seen other entities, but I've asked about it, and I know that other entities from other races will go there. So it gives them an opportunity, as it did me, to feel relaxed, have a break from, many of them are there doing diplomatic work or other kind of work. It gives them a break from the work that they're doing and a chance to rejuvenate and connect with the natural world. Yeah, this is maybe a bit harder to explain. I would say that the feel of the craft is is warm and inviting. I don't mean temperature warm, I mean like walking into a nice homely home kind of thing, and it's warm and inviting. It's like that, but it is otherworldly. It isn't the way we would make a homey kind of warm environment. It's distinctly otherworldly, and it's not personalized except in personal rooms or particular rooms that are set up for particular activities. Let's say there's a diplomatic activity taking place involving one race, and they have particular affections for certain things, and the room will be set up the way that they would like a room, that sort of thing. But when I say otherworldly, there are times when it feels very dreamlike, because you're walking around in a foreign environment, sitting, sleeping, whatever, exercising in a foreign environment where things happen that don't normally happen. Entities that you've never seen before come and go. A craft that can create whatever you need in terms of your material or energetic needs. A craft that can know what you're thinking and feeling and can move you across the craft just at a simple request. You can get lost on the craft, as I have, and then simply ask where you are, and you can either receive instructions in whatever way you want, or you can be taken instantly to another place, taken back to where you were lost. So there are all these things happening that are just unreal. And when you consider that as a gestalt, as a whole, it makes the whole experience very dreamlike. And when you add looking out into space, it's very, very dreamlike. And then add the other kind of things, talking to ETs who understand you and can speak English. I may not speak what they're speaking, but they understand me, and I can either speak out loud or speak within my mind, and vice versa. So you put all of this together, and suddenly you're in this completely otherworldly, alien environment that is not at all like what we're used to. So can't help but think of it as being dreamlike. And there are many times on board the craft I've had to just take stock of myself and just check, is this really happening? Am I really here today experiencing this? And certainly when I've woken up in the morning, or when I've woken up in the night and I've gotten up, say, to go to the toilet. I have one kidney because of my tumours, and the original tumour being removed. To get up and first step out of bed and you look up and there's a window on space, and whatever you've just gone past is there, a planet or stars in the distance, whatever, or a lot of blackness, or if you're in the reticular manifold, different colours. It's not easy going to the toilet. It's surreal getting up in the middle of the night and going and doing normal stuff. In my house I have a mental map of where I can go in the dark, and occasionally I'll crash into something. Let's say my son left something in the hall, and then I'll go to the toilet and come back and hopefully not crash into it again, and try and get back to sleep. And I sort of have like a 5-minute window. If I can't get to sleep, I could be awake for hours. On the craft that never happens. It always helps you to get to sleep, but you have these experiences waking up, or even without getting up out of bed, just looking up and there's space, and it just, you wake from a dream, and usually my dreams are me on Earth doing normal things in normal dreams, and then you're looking out at space, and it's like leaving one dream, entering another, only it's real. It's very confronting. And then you wake up in the morning sort of groggy and blurry-eyed and go and do your things, and go to the toilet, have a shower, bath, whatever, and then come back and get dressed, and once again you're looking out in space, or a craft is talking to you. It isn't something, for me, you get used to the pragmatics of it, but the surrealness of it, I never got used to it. It's like every day, mind-boggling. Every day, oh shit, I'm really doing this. And it's very similar, going to another world. So that's a basic overview of what it's like to be on an ET craft, the atmosphere of an ET craft, the physical conditions and what it feels like. This is a little bit longer than my normal shortcuts. I did think about making some kind of medium cut, but I think I'll just occasionally have a long shortcut. And occasionally, if they're too long, I'll just turn them into full episodes. So it's my wish that you're well and you found something of interest in this particular shortcut. Till next shortcut, rock on, dudes and dudettes, cowabunga, people of Earth, and Bray Garlic. And that's a magpie, a baby magpie singing outside.